That's how it goes.
People do it. By do it, I mean watch it.
I'm gonna turn the speakers on, so
Yeah. Do a final mic check.
Test. Yep, I hear we're in. Ooh,
Yeah,
we're in
same.
the system.
Some more?
Keep talking? Okay, I could keep talking. Hello. We have one lovely audience member. Hello. We're going to see more people come. They'll hear talking. Maybe they'll see panel is starting.
Okay, that sounds better.
We're good?
I thought I still heard it a little bit.
Okay.
But it sounds good now.
Okay.
All right, and... Okay, you're good to go whenever... Recording.
Yep, recording is going. You're good to go.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the panel Speedrunning Around the World. We're going to be talking about international events here in this panel because, amazingly, there are a ton of events for speedrunning happening all over the world all the time, and often we don't know about a lot of them. But first, I am Selkuth Mind, or Sel for short. I am from Canada. I am a speedrunner. I am a marathon volunteer. I also run an event as well. And so I've had the privilege of being involved in a ton of different events internationally as an online participant, including some events in languages other than English. We're going to get to that later on, though. What I will say is this is just going to be a little sample of things, a little sort of broad intro, give you some places where you can start looking for information and checking out some things. So if I miss an event that you know of, my apologies. I don't know everything. At the very end, if there's an event that you know is super cool, please raise your hand. You can come up and tell us about it. This is just an opportunity for folks to get to know a little bit more about the international scene. So the way I'm defining an international event is an event that is located, either it's in person, so it's located in a country other than the US, or the primary organization team or the charity they're supporting is a non-US based charity. So with that out of the way, we're going to just take a little shift north of where we are right now to Canada, and we're going to start with Preventathon. So this is the event that I run. And so we are currently just an online event. We're hoping to eventually do something in person in Western Canada, but we're not there yet. And we raise money for Little Warriors. They're a Canadian charity that helps children who've experienced some pretty significant abuse. You can find out more about us at preventathon.com. Every event that I mentioned here, I'm going to have a link to in some form, be that their website, their Twitch, whatever seems to be their primary social. Yeah, that's starting event. If you want to know more about that one, hey, come talk to me. I would love to talk to you more about Preventathon. Another Canadian event that is very dear to me is Lady Arcaders. This is organized by Metroid Crime. She's here on site at least part of this week. So if you see her around, I'm certain she'd be happy to talk to you about the group. Lady Arcaders is an all-women/femme group. So if that is a identification that is meaningful to you, very much welcome to join. There are opportunities for non-women and femmes to be involved in some ways. They have some volunteer roles that are open to anyone and things like that. And they do some unique things at Lady Arcaders. So they have online bi-weekly showcases on Thursdays and Sundays. These can be anything from speedruns to first playthrough races to someone is cooking a pie from a video game. Just kind of broadly gaming-related content happening, low pressure, just very chill, fun situations. They also, once a year, do an online charity event called LASS, Lady Arcaders Super Showcase, raising money for CARE. That's their big charity event. And then they've also, in the past 2 years, started doing in-person events in Toronto, Ontario. And these have been one-day events, non-charity, very fun, just showcasing speedrunning and having a lot of fun with it. You can find more about them at ladyarcaders.com. And now for another Canadian group, we have No Reset. G-Virus is the head organizer. He's here on site. And they run charity events twice a year in Pointe Claire. If you're like me and don't know Quebec very well, that's just outside of Montreal, which is a very large city in Quebec. These events are typically in March and September, so that's sort of spring and fall. Now, if you know anything about Quebec, Quebec is sort of the French-speaking province of Canada. So these events are bilingual English and French. However, I was reassured, I spoke to G-Virus yesterday, that you don't need to speak both languages to attend. So it is a welcoming space regardless of how much English or French you speak, you're welcome to be there. And these are strictly in-person events. They've got volunteering opportunities, all sorts of things. Sort of think like GDQ, they've got an arcade, but just at a much smaller scale. And of course, noreset.tv, you can find all of their information there. So with Canada out of the way, oh, actually, no, about No Reset, another thing I just realized, they just announced the schedule for their next event earlier today. So if you want to see what's happening with them, you can go check out their schedule for the March event, which is very exciting. But yes, we've talked about some Canada events. We're going to stick with English-speaking events, but we're going to jump across the pond, and we're going to talk about the UK. Starting with the UK Speedrunner Gathering, better known as UKSG. Some of you may have heard of this group. They're one of the larger groups in the UK. They run 3 events per year. They're all in person in Glasgow, Scotland. They are raising money for charity. They raise for Crisis. It's a charity focused on homelessness. And they are very much a grassroots sort of style event. They wish to be a starting place for runners who are new to marathons. And so their goal is to make the event as friendly and as beginner-friendly as possible. They're looking for the potential in runners and volunteers rather than just looking at those with a ton of polish or experience. Something that a lot of people see when they look at like GDQ, they see a lot of world record holders, a lot of very experienced runners. And while UKSG obviously will still take highly experienced runners, they also are looking for people who are newer and who maybe need a little bit of, they don't know how to maybe make a perfect submission video, but they've got the right skills, they've got a good starting foundation, and so they want to be very welcoming to people. Same thing goes for volunteers. They're also proudly pro-LGBTQ+ and family-friendly, so a wonderful welcoming environment for everyone. They do not have a website. Their best place to talk to them is on Discord, but if you don't want to join another Discord, you can follow them on Blue Sky or check out their Twitch. Again, they do 3 events a year. The spring and the winter events are 2-day events, and then the winter event, because it's February and November, those are 2-day events, and then the one in the spring, early summer is 4 days. We have another UK-based event. This is Warwick's Awesome Speedruns and Demos, or WASD. And this is a student-run event because it takes place at the University of Warwick. If you're like me and don't know your geography of England very well, that's sort of northwest of London. Very cool, again, student-run. This is entirely done by the students of this university. My understanding is anyone is welcome to submit and come attend, but it's a student-run project there, which is very cool. Their next event is going to be in mid-February, and they have submissions currently open for that. So if you want to travel over to England, there is an event that is happening very soon over there. And of course, they do have a website, warwickspeed.run. Lots of great information over there for you. I'm going to give an honorary mention to a group called Speedrun Tools UK, or STUK. They are not a marathon yet. They're currently a collection of packages made by wonderful Nick R.P. Green, who's over in the UK, for speedrun marathons to get started. But they are working to hopefully do something in person in 2026 for the first time. So I don't have a ton of information on them, but you can keep an eye on Speedrun Tools UK if you want to know more about some more UK-based events. All right, so we've done Canada, we've done the UK. Let's talk about Europe. So there's sort of 3 groups who are sort of all connected to each other. One of them is UKSG. The next one is BSG, or Benelux Speedrunner Gathering. If you're like me and unsure what Benelux stands for, that is a term that is used to describe Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. They're all sort of in a group together, so Benelux. So they now do 2-week-long, or 2 charity events per year that are a full week long, and they also, from what I've seen, go 24/7 like GDQ does. But originally they started as just a simple 1 weekend a month little event. They do in-person in the Netherlands, so even though they are the Benelux area, all their events have happened in the Netherlands, just because that's where most people are located. And their next event is going to be January 18th to 24th. So if you're feeling the GDQ blues after AGDQ ends, go watch them. It's a very fun event. They're very community focused and driven. The way they've chosen their charities for the past several years has been by a community vote. And they've done things like cancer research, mental health programs. There's a number of different things that they've done, and it's all been by the community's own recommendation of good charities for them to look into. But they've got very warm and very welcoming vibes. It's always very fun to watch their streams. I've put it on it many times at random hours of the night. It's just good, great vibes. And as well, they do welcome participants from anywhere. You do not need to be from the Benelux region. You do not need to be European to participate. If you're willing to travel over there, they are more than happy to consider your submissions or your volunteer application. They do have a website, bsgmarathon.com. And now for the third of that group, we have the Norway Speedrunner Gathering. You might have noticed a theme between some of those logos. They all sort of shared that joystick logo between the three of them because they all collaborate together. So this is Norway Speedrunner Gathering, or NSG. They do 2 charity events per year in Norway. And it started as a result of the head organizer, Nordic, really wanted there to be an event in Norway. Just because Norway, if you know your European geography, is a little bit further away from like the Netherlands or the UK. It's a little bit further away. And so they wanted to have an event there. And alongside an individual known as Chrissy, they put together NSG, and they've been doing 2 events per year for a few years now. Their website has a ton of information about making attending super accessible, down from like, here's how you take the bus in Norway, here's how you figure out like hotel options in Norway, plugs, because they have very unique power plugs in Norway apparently, and also for console runners, like, hey, be careful, you could fry your North American console if you plug it in the wrong way. Here's information on how to protect your console if you're coming as a runner. So their website is a ton of just really useful information if you want to come attend NSG. And now, of course, we've got one more European English-speaking event to speak of, and it's one that you've probably all heard of, and that is the European Speedrunner Assembly, or ESA. This is hands down the largest European English-speaking event. I'm sure most of you have probably heard of them. I assume they're quite well known. After GDQ, they're sort of usually the best known. They've been a little controversial at times, but they still are an international event that exists. So they do 2 events per year in Sweden, and they welcome participants from anywhere in the world. I've seen participants from as far away as Asia to Canada to the US. If you're willing to travel over there, they're willing to consider you. Of course, their website is there. But I'm now curious, I have a question for all of you, just by a show of hands, how many of you have watched a speedrun event in a language other than English? This could include like an English restream of an event. None of you. Okay. Well, then I'm very excited for this next section, because we're going to now talk about events in languages other than English. And then at the end, we'll talk about some things that are making those events more accessible to us English speakers. So we're going to start with German events, because this is the group that I know the best. I've had the privilege, even though I don't speak German, of being in a couple of German events, which was very fun. They provided me commentators to help translate things. You know, the wonderful thing about speedrunning, it's all video games, we're all excited for it. So there's 2 groups here, one of which is Germensch, that's the first one. They're sort of the biggest group in Germany. They also are known for doing German restreams. So right now, the German restream of AGDQ is happening on the Germensch channel. They do that all the time. They sometimes do it for things like Fatales and other groups, but for AGDQ and SGQ, that's where the German restream is going to be. They also do some other events. They also will host some community events as well, smaller things. They sort of serve as a nice big hub for German language opportunities. Another group to point out is Slow Runs Live. They are a very interesting group. They do 1 to 2 events per year, usually with a charity focus. And they have done both in-person and online events. My understanding is before COVID, they were very much an in-person marathon. Post-COVID, they have sort of gone back and forth on what they do, as many events have done. Those are 2 great starting points if you're looking into German events. Good organizers, definitely recommend them. And they're welcoming vibes. I know for sure that Slow Runs Live, for their online things, are willing to welcome international runners. if you can find a German commentator to come help you. And often, people in those communities, if they speak English, they're willing to also be like, hey, I'm willing to come be a comms buddy for you and help you translate. Because, we're all nerds. We all like to share games with each other. Next is the French. I forgot what order I put these in. All right, French language events. Now, some of you may have heard of Speedrunning. Does that ring a bell? You might remember in March, one of the two, of 2025, GDQ was the English language restream for Speedrunning 5. This is by far, to my understanding, the biggest French event. So it was located in Lyon, France. They raised something like 2.5 million euros, which is massive. That's on comparison to scale of AGDQ and SGDQ. Absolutely massive group. Very fun. They do some really cool, unique things. If you watch the English restream, you would see the two hosts sitting there and talking back and forth. It's very fun, very different vibe in a lot of ways than GDQ, which is the great thing about seeing other language events. They do some unique things, and it's cool to get ideas. I don't know, I'm an event organizer. I like to get new ideas. So Speedrunning, massive group. I forget what channel they are located on, but their website, lots of information, very professional, and it should translate fairly easily. Some of these websites don't translate very well. The Speedrunning one translates quite well. Nitro Speedrun is another group. They're a little bit smaller. They do a lot of sort of community-based events, a lot more sort of showcases, just smaller things, but they also do some bigger things. And I believe they also do a mix of in-person and online things, just sort of depending on the exact event, the demand, all these different things. There's a lot of French events. This is what I'll tell you. There's a lot of French events. There's, I think, actually more French events than there are English language events based out of North America. It is quite impressive. And then another group I want to highlight is Fast and Fabulous. They are another all-women femme group. They have done in-person a little bit. They do a little bit more like Fatales tends to do, where there's an in-studio element and then a lot of remote runs. But they're also very cool. They did the French restream for a Fatales event, I think, last year. So they do some restreaming stuff as well. All in all, though, just a very, very lovely, very welcoming group. They're, of the French groups, my favorite group to talk to. Might be slight bias as a fellow femme. But yeah, French groups, there's tons of them out there. This is a good starting point. Spanish language events. This is where I will admit I don't know a whole lot of Spanish events. It could be because it seems, from what I can tell from my research, that the majority of Spanish events run through Speedrun Español. They are also the Spanish restream group for AGDQ and SGDQ. Their channel is live right now with the Spanish restream. But they also seem to host a lot of smaller community events. So these can be smaller charity events, relays, different little things like that. This seems to be, to my understanding, the hub for a lot of Spanish things. And they aren't just located in Spain. They have people from all over South America, Mexico. Basically, if you speak Spanish of any variety, this is the space for you. Which is very cool. I think they've also got some connections to some things like Portuguese and that as well. Although, again, their content is very much focused on Spanish. But cool group, lots of exciting things they do over there. And then I believe we have, yes, Italian. This is a group I just found about earlier this year. So the Italian speedrun community, they do a mix of things. They have done some in-person events. They've done some online stuff. I couldn't find a clear number on how many events they do per year, but again, like a lot of these groups, they're doing some charity, they're doing some non. Very cool group, very friendly. Also, the organizers of these groups, of this group in particular, speak a lot of English, which has been lovely for me talking to them. It saves me trying to translate things because my Italian is incredibly poor. But they're very friendly, and again, the theme that goes with all of these groups is, even with the language barrier, they are passionate about sharing their passion for speedrunning and for video games. And they're just excited to talk to another nerd, even if, we got to Google Translate back and forth and go, that doesn't seem quite right, a correct sentence, but close enough. But yeah, that's a very friendly group. They do some very cool things. My understanding is they're also welcoming of international runners who don't speak Italian if you can find someone to provide commentary for you. But again, the general rule of thumb in my experience is if you're interested in an event, you don't speak the language, reach out to the organizers and see if they're willing to welcome you. Many of them are, some groups are not welcoming. So do your own research and respect their own rules. All right, and now Japanese language events. There's a lot of them. There is a lot of them. I'm going to thank Sawayoshi for giving me information because there's so many. So their recommendation is if you want to see the list of all Japanese events happening at any one time, go to that link there. That is a master calendar of every Japanese event that is happening at a time. There is a lot of them. I am not kidding. It's often 2 a weekend. There is a lot. The majority of these, from my understanding, are non-charity events. Some of that is, from my understanding, due to the Japanese banking system's a little bit different, and charity events is a little more complicated for them. But they don't do as many charity events. They do a lot of very focused, very niche, very community-based little events, and all throughout the year. So some big ones that Sawa recommended that I should tell you all about are here, and I'll tell you about all of these different ones. So RTA in Japan is the biggest one. They do for charity. This is a charity group. I believe they typically raise for Doctors Without Borders. So again, we're very familiar with that here at GDQ. They will accept international runners, provided you can provide a Japanese commentator. That can be tricky to find sometimes, but they are very welcoming of if you can give us Japanese comms, we'll definitely consider you. They do in-person, but with a heavy mix of remote runs as well. Their last event happened just before AGDQ, and there was, I would say, easily about 20% of the runs were remote. Some of that comes as well from culture. There's a lot of VTubers, lots of people who just don't wish to show their face, and so they'll do it remotely with no camera or a VTuber. And so it's very respectful of remote runners. The next one is Long Speedrun Summit. This is a event specifically for long speedruns. This was inspired by a marathon known as Really Really Longathon. Is that familiar to folks? Yeah, so Really Really Longathon. This is the Japanese version, Long Speedrun Summit. Then we have RTA in V-Streamers. So this is an event specifically for VTubers who speedrun. Makes a lot of sense. Then you have Breakneck, which is for speedy/stylish games. I have no further clarification on what that means, but I would guess things sort of like Neon White, Mirror's Edge, probably your very... Celeste might even fit in that. Things that are very zoomy, very fast, so I'd imagine a lot of platformers. But it sounds fun. It sounds kind of cool. We also have pixel art runners. So these are for games that have pixel art. Very broad, very generic. We're going to have lots of really cool things there. And then there is Indie RTA Relay. So this is a relay-based type event for indie games, which is very fun. This one is organized by Sawayoshi. So Sawa is from the US, fully bilingual English, Japanese. If you know Sawa, they're wonderful. If you are an indie game runner, go talk to Sawa. I'm sure they will find a way to get you involved in this if you wish to be. And then there is RTA Boot Camp. This is a very unusual event by North American standards because it happens roughly every 3 weeks. And it is mainly for new runners or for recently learned runs. So think of it as almost being more like a showcase opportunity for, hey, you just learned this run? Cool, this event is in 3 weeks, you can be at it. Which is really cool. We don't run events like that in North America, but they do, which is very cool. And then as well, I want to note Japanese Restream. I think they sometimes have some other smaller community events, but they are primarily a channel that just does restreams of other language events. They are lovely to work with if you're an event organizer. They are very lovely to work with. Even with some slight language barriers, they're a delight and they're very fun. And they're incredibly grateful for any of the love sent towards them because they're there to do fun and to enjoy speedruns. That's the one thing I would say is you've got the French are really passionate about speedruns and the Japanese are also very, very passionate. And it's fun to, even though I don't understand a thing of Japanese, to watch the chat and just see the excitement happen. They love emotes. It's totally fine. I've gone in there after a run and just kind of waved and gotten a lot of like, good job responses back. They're very friendly, even if language is a challenge. And so we've talked about a lot of these different groups. Many of them will do language restreams for English events if you reach out to them. It's going to depend on their capacity. Language restreams are extremely volunteer intensive because you need people to run the tech, you need people to do commentary, in some cases to learn commentary for certain runs if it's not a popular game. They're very intensive, but most of these groups I've mentioned are willing to at least consider it. Some of them are more specialized, things like Germensch and Speedruns Espanol and Japanese Restream, they're more specialized, they're used to it. But you can also find some smaller groups and collaborate with them. They're often very excited for the opportunity. But I'm going to note one opportunity. So we've talked about all these groups in other languages, and I don't know, does anyone here speak any of these languages that we've mentioned groups from? Okay, we have one person. We've got like a little bit of a sort of, okay. So for most of us here, okay, Japanese, okay. For most of us, watching these events would be very difficult because we don't understand things. That's very fair, yeah. So can kind of follow, but couldn't commentate. There's a really cool group that I want to point out, and that is English Speedrun Restream. This is a very cool group that started in 2025, and they have the goal of bringing international events to an English audience. Because so often we're used to, like here at GDQ, we're used to talk about the other language restreams. We're used to the English events being restreamed. We're not used to the other events being restreamed into English. And I know the Spadons 5 restream that GDQ did was very inspiring to a lot of the English events. Because it's like, this was so cool. We got to see this event and we got to understand, and it brought a community together. It was so cool as someone who commentated a couple of runs at Spadons, getting to see French people from the French stream who spoke some English come into chat and help translate things for us to help us understand. And it was so cool. That's a really cool thing. So, English Speedrun Restream, newer group, started. Sawa Yoshi's one of the people involved. Bubzia is also involved. You might recognize that name as being one of the runners here, doing blindfolded Zelda bid war. Very famous runner. Tons of other folks involved. And they've done a few events now, but they're always looking for more volunteers because they're still in a very early stage. So if you're curious about like checking out other language events, but you don't necessarily want to go like try and watch it yourself, follow English Speedrun Restream. Volunteer for them if you have the time, because it is a wonderful way of helping sort of reverse the tables. Because for so many years it's been the English events get restreamed and the other language events don't. And we're now starting to sort of try and equalize that, because some of these events are really cool. I've said that millions of times, so I can't emphasize how cool some of these events are, because they do unique things. They do things differently than us, and that's really cool to get to see the diversity in speedrun events. So, I'm not involved with them, I'm not involved with organizing them, I just think they're really cool. You really, really should go check out English Speedrun Restream, because they're phenomenal. So I'm curious, of all these groups we've talked about, how many have heard of at least one of them? Okay, how many have heard of at least 2 of these events? Okay, 3. Okay, we have a maybe on 3 from one person. Okay. That's fair. So my encouragement to you is to go check out some of these groups. Even if you just go check out the English language ones, that's also great. They're run by really cool people, just like us. They're just in another part of the world. And they're as passionate as we are about things. Before I take some questions, I'm going to give some special thanks. One to Sawa Yoshi, who already shouted out for the Japanese event knowledge, because I don't know anywhere near enough. And then as well, a couple event organizers, Pazzi, Raquel, and G-Virus, sent me some wonderful, lovely documents, images, different things about their events. And so, yeah. Are there any questions or curiosities from people about these events?
When there's different language
Oh, okay. So we have a question here about when a language restream happens of an event, what happens with the Twitch revenue for the restream channel? That's a great question that I don't know. I could give you an educated guess. Not all channels are necessarily revenue generating, of course, right? I imagine most of them would probably keep their own revenue, but that could depend on specific agreements. Yeah, that's a very interesting question, but I suspect it varies by group. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you. I hope you enjoyed. Please keep enjoying the wonderful wild world of speedrunning events. It's been so cool getting to see more and more events, and many of them have positions as well. If you're like, I can't travel, keep an eye out. Many of them have some opportunities, sometimes limited, but they may have opportunities for you to be involved remotely in some capacity. Never hurts to ask, because again, we're all one big community and we want to help each other. And even just go make friends. I have so many friends all around the world now as a result of me just going into Discords and being like, hi, I think your event's neat. I would love to know more. So I encourage you to do the same. Hopefully see you around. If you have questions, I'll be around for a little bit. You're free to come and chat with me. But yeah, thank you so much for coming.